Okay, today we are going to go ahead and rebuild the lower unit on a 112-pound thrust Minn Kota. This particular model is an Ultrex. You can tell it's got some age on it, but the lovely thing about these trolling motors, very easy to change out parts and keep going for a very long time. This is a customer of ours, does some guiding, so he puts the trolling motor through quite a bit. But as you can see, she's still going, just need a nice lower unit rebuild. So for today, this is what we've got going on. We are only going to replace the armature in this trolling motor. This is just a precautionary measure. We've got a guide client. He is in very much need of a trolling motor that is well maintained. So that's all we're going to do today, but I am going to show you everything that we're going to need for a typical lower unit rebuild. This, of course, is our seal kit. We've got a 36-volt trolling motor. It is a brush trolling motor. Therefore, we need the 4.5-inch diameter seal kit. Every time that we open up a trolling motor, we always replace the seals and put new seals in it. It's just good practice. We don't want water getting in there. Uh, these in particular are seals that will go in this brush end housing. However, what we do that makes life so much easier, if we need them, we simply replace the brush end housing. These are very difficult to remove, and it's really just a hassle. It is worth it just to get a new brush end housing and put it on that trolling motor. Here we have brush plate, we have new screws, we have our springs for our brushes. I will show you later how all that goes together, as well as an assortment of washers. Now, the first thing I would typically do is I would take these are self-threading, and I would go ahead and thread this brush end housing just in case we need to do that. It's very difficult to do when you're actually putting a trolling motor together, to put this brush plate on there with the brushes on it and then try to thread these holes while trying to screw it in. So we're going to go ahead, and that would be my first step, is to come in here. I believe this is a 1/4 inch. Come in here, go ahead and thread those, and that'll make your life a lot easier. Now, moving on to the trolling motor. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to take off our prop, get back behind there. Sometimes these need a little persuasion. In this case, this prop has been changed out quite a few times, so it should be very easy. Just undo this. Okay, make sure not to lose our, oh, there goes our washer. I will pick it up shortly. The main thing I'm concerned about is this pin. Okay, we've got our prop off. You've got 2 long bolts that run through this trolling motor and fasten everything together. We're going to need to take those off. All right, this is a 5/16. We're just going to come in here and just ease those off. Now, this can be very difficult. If you've got a trolling motor that has a ton of corrosion in here from water intrusion, whatever it is, sometimes they can get stuck. When that happens, that means we have to replace this piece as well, because you will eventually break these off. In this particular case, they came right out, which is perfect for us. So I'm going to go ahead and get this off and slowly pull these out. All right, I am just pulling out the last of this long bolt here. And as you can see by looking at both of these, we've got a little bit of dirtiness going on there. So we're going to need to really have a good look in there, make sure everything's clean enough. One of the important parts of this is to make sure everything in here is clean. You don't want to have materials running around in there when you're running this trolling motor on high. So at this point, we can now begin to pop this piece off. There we go. So we can see there, that's not terrible. This is from sealing it previously. This is just a little white lithium grease. Everything seems to be good and in place here. It doesn't look terrible as far as corrosion or that we've got a ton of bad stuff in there. So this is good. So now we're just going to kind of pull that back. We have our armature seated in here. So at this point, this may take a little muscle. It is magnetized in here. You can pull this out and have. Moving on to the back end, I'm going to have to replace these two brushes. In order to do that, I'm going to have to take this brush plate off of this brush end housing. Right here, I've just got a 1/4 inch. Going to take these off. Just like that. Set these aside. I'm going to go ahead and take this out. This is our ground wire. So we're going to want to make sure we put that back in there as is. If you are replacing this brush end housing as well as this brush plate, you need to pay attention to which one of these go where. If these become backwards, then the lower unit will spin the wrong direction. So if you are replacing that, just make sure. I can see here we've got no corrosion, we've got good connection. I'm just going to leave that for now and replace these. Now to do that, I'm just going to take this spring, bend it off here, and take these spade connectors off, just like so, and these will slide right out. Just like that. Okay, brand new brushes. Stick those in there, like so. Go ahead, make sure your spring, it's going to go in there like that. That little piece is going to catch around that back. And you take your fingers, pair of pliers, whatever you need to, get that around and slot it in. Make sure it's seated good right there. And make sure this is, you don't want this unraveled completely, but we're just going to make sure that that is nicely in place there. Okay, there's that one. And this one here. And just like that, that is going to be our brushes. Go ahead and start putting this back together. Again, if these ever have to be replaced, it's very difficult to get those wires seated correctly. Just part of the fun. All right, I have taken out these 3 washers from this nose cap. These washers go in here in a particular order. So first, you have a flat washer. And this has got a little bit of grease in here. This really helps this stick. Makes it to where they're not falling out on you as you're trying to put everything together. Plus a little bit of grease for that bearing is good. So we've got our flat washer. These two are concave. So the way we're going to put them is just like that. And that's going to add tension, putting everything together when we put that armature back in there. So just set those down in there like that. Again, this has got some grease on it. I wouldn't worry about this. This is just actually leftover white lithium grease from when we sealed it before. And that takes care of this end. Now, okay, one of the more difficult aspects of this has to run in that channel whenever we put this back together. This can be a difficult part of this. Again, wherever your wires are seated is basically how this has to run. If they're seated kind of differently, here we have them both through that channel. They've been laid that way for a while. They're used to it. Should be fairly simple. I didn't have to replace these. If you did, you have to make sure everything is going to line up there. This is not going to go into place correctly. And also, we can't have that armature rubbing against any of the wires. That will cause a ton of problems. So, just something to keep in mind. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. I'm going to put new seals around both here and here. These also have little rubber seals on them, and we're going to replace those as well and add a little bit of white lithium grease. We have our fresh new lower unit, manufactured September 30th, 2025. Nice, pretty clean. There are a couple things you need to make sure of. You need to make sure that this C-clamp is where it should be, right here in that groove. And it comes with 2 of these washers. You've got a metal one and a nylon one. We're going to go with metal down to there. and then our nylon one. And that's going to be ready to put in. It will also come with a bearing already in place, ready to go. Make sure before we slide this in, I've added some grease on the inside of this just to help seal it up, and we're going to get ready to slide this in. Okay. Now, keep in mind, this is magnetized. This is going to want to pull in here. So I've got to keep a grip on this. It's going to want to slide in there, stick it where it goes, and it's going to put a little bit of tension on that. What we're going to have to do is get in there. I've got a Phillips screwdriver. I use a Phillips. I don't want to put anything real sharp against those, but I am just going to slowly let that slide in there and kind of pry these out until our armature slides into place just like that. All right. I've got our new seals on here with a little bit of extra white lithium grease on them. Got to make sure these guys are going to sit just right. We do not want to have any problems with those seals. White lithium grease is a great thing that we use. It's not necessary per se. It's just a good extra practice. We do not want our customers leaving this shop with a lower unit that's going to get water in it. I've also added fresh new O-rings to here. So these are all ready to be put back into place. Now, putting this together, we want to make sure that fin is going to line up straight up and down. You don't want it cocked to one side or another. That can create problems with the wiring not seating correctly. Now, we've got to get our bolt to line up in that groove and get in to that. This can be a tricky part of the process. Once we have the top one started, I've got a trick for the bottom one to get it in there and started as well. All right. So we've got that top one started. I don't want to tighten this completely. I just want to leave it a little loose. We're going to take this bottom one. It should go in far easier. It doesn't have a channel to necessarily slide into. And there's a ridge in there. And that ridge looks just like this. And so I'll try to set that bolt up on top of that ridge, let it barely slide off. I'll feel it slide and then be able to push it and get it going into that hole. And just like that. Took me a couple of tries, but we were successful. And again, tighten these. You don't want to overdo them. You do not want to completely destroy those seals. And gently do them one at a time until everything is seated correctly. Again, we're trying to make sure that this is lined up with the shaft. And just ease her on tight. Finally, we have our last step of the process. As you notice, I've made this trolling motor vertical. The reason for that is there's an accelerometer in this head that lets it know when it's down, so that way the prop will turn. I've got this plugged into 36-volt power. What I'm going to do is I am going to start on a low power. Now I'm going to press this button, watch for rotation, making sure everything's doing as it should, and I'm going to give this a good listen. I want to make sure that there's no rubbing going on in here whatsoever other than the brushes rubbing against the armature. You can run into real problems if let's say a wire has gotten a little bit out of hand, one of the brushes gets a little bit out of hand, then you can really run into some problems. So just give it a little juice. Okay. Put it on a little bit more. Let it run. Give it a good listen. Make sure everything's running properly. And finally on high. And very nice. Just like that. It's good to go. Ready for another fishing season. Guys, please visit us at bcmarineproducts.com. We've got all these parts on there ready to rock and roll. Plus, we've got advice from myself, from Scott. We deal with a lot of these trolling motors day in and day out, and hopefully will be of great help. Thank you.